Okay, guys, so we're going to talk about literal equations today. Literal equations is an equation that shows a relationship between two or more variables. So, for example, in science you learned that distance equals rate times time. That's showing a relationship between distance, rate, and time. You also learned in the past that the area of a triangle, area, equals 1/2 base times the height. That's showing the relationship between the area, the base, and the height. So that's 3 variables and 3 variables. Okay? Another one that you've learned is simple interest. Interest equals principal times rate times time. That also is showing a relationship between 4 different variables. Okay? So let's look at some individual examples here. The first one you have is area equals 1/2 base times height, and they say let's solve for B. So the reason we solve for B in this case is because there's times where you're looking at a triangle or you're given a problem. You may know the area, you may know the height, but you may not know the base. So you have to solve and find the base. So it's easier if you already have the equation set up solved for B, so you can just plug your numbers in and go. And we'll see that in a little bit. First of all, just like when you're solving for X, you look at your variables around, like what's the farthest thing from the base that you have? Well, your farthest thing away from B here is the 1/2. So you want to get rid of that 1/2 first. So to get rid of the 1/2, you can't, it's being multiplied, but you can't divide by a fraction. Instead, you multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by 2/1 to get rid of this. Okay? So 2/1, which is 2. 2 times A is 2A equals base times height. Okay? So now we look and we say, okay, base is being multiplied by height, so how do we get rid of it? The opposite of multiplication is division. We divide by H. We divide by H. So B equals 2 times the area over the height. Okay? So that's your answer. That's how you solve for B. Okay? So you can do this in other equations too. So let's look at another one. Let's look at the simple interest equation. So interest equals principal times rate times time. Okay? So let's look at, sorry, I'm trying to change my color, but I guess I can't. Here we go. Let's look at the different variables around. So we're going to solve for t. So we're trying to get t by itself. Okay? So how do I get away t alone? The first thing is you look what's with t. T has a p and an r here. They're both being multiplied. So the opposite of multiply is divide. So let's divide by p and r. That'll get rid of them here. Divide by p and r. Okay? So you have t equals I over PR. Okay? That is solved for t, so you are now done. Okay? So in an interest equation, if you knew your interest rate, or the amount of interest you're going to earn, you knew your principal, what you started with, and you knew your rate, you could find out how long it would take to reach that goal. Okay? Look at another one here. Okay, so the next one is another equation that you've seen in the past. Perimeter equals 2 lengths and 2 widths, right? That's how you find perimeter. You add your 2 lengths and you add your 2 widths. It's like the fencing around. Let's solve for W. So we're trying to get W by itself. So in trying to get W by itself, the first thing you have to do is look, W's way over here. Farthest thing from W is this 2L. It's connected, so it's one piece. 2L is positive, right? Up here you don't see a negative, so you're going to, opposite would be subtract it. Okay, gets rid of it here. So you have P minus 2L equals 2W, right? Finally, looking at W, W is being multiplied by 2, so we divide by 2. You divide every single part by 2, right? Get rid of this. So W equals P over 2 minus L, because these 2's cross out right there. Okay? So we have now solved for W. All right? So now let's look at a word problem. So let's say the perimeter of a rectangle is 60 feet. So perimeter is 60 feet. And the width is 12 feet. Width is 12 feet. Okay? Find the length. So we need to know the length. What is our length? Well, we know from before, perimeter equals 2 lengths plus 2 widths, right? So let's try to get what we're looking for, which is L by itself. So again, L is over here. The farthest thing from the L is the 2W, because the other 2 is attached. So we're going to subtract 2W. So we get P minus 2W equals 2L. Finally, L is just being multiplied by 2, so we divide by 2. So that ends up canceling out. So L equals P over 2 minus W. Okay? Well, now we know P is 60, and so P is 60, W is 12, right? So let's plug them in. L equals 60 over 2 minus 12. 60 over 2 is 30. 30 minus 12 is 18. So our length is 18. Okay? Easy enough. Let's try one more example. Okay? Sally knows that the route from her house in Orlando to her best friend's house is 393 miles long. Okay? She knows that distance equals rate times time. If she averages 62 miles per hour, how long will the trip take? So we know that looking at our example here, miles is your distance, so that's your distance. Speed is a rate. Okay? So we're trying to find our time. What's our time? So let's get time by itself. Looking at our equation here, time and rate are being multiplied. So let's divide by the rate to get rid of it. So we have time equals distance over rate. Okay? So now that we know the distance and we know the rate, we know our distance, we can say time equals distance over rate, right? Just divide the two numbers. 393 divided by 62 gives us about 6.3 hours. So it's going to take us about 6.3 hours to get to our friend's house there. Okay? So just like I said, literal equations are just solving for x in a sort, but with all variable, or mostly variables, not very many numbers. Okay? So you can't combine things like over here. You couldn't combine our distance and our rate into one number. You have to keep them separate. Okay? So if you have questions, make sure you ask.